much or more. So they started a podcast to talk all about it, and 30 and Nerdy was born. Oh, 30 and Nerdy was born. You might hear them chat about shows like The Witcher or movies like Lord of the Rings. And if Josh has to choose, he is loyal to Marvel, while Tyler goes more for DC. Yes, Tyler goes more for DC. Now come, one and all, nerd up or shut up, just answer the call to be part of our journey into magical worlds. Join us and cheers to ya nerds. Join us and cheers to ya nerds.
Hey,
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm burning up. It's like 95 degrees here today, but otherwise good.
Yeah, it's been, if it ain't been 90 something degrees here, it's been storming. There's not just a
Yeah.
regular day.
Yeah, it's been, well, it's just almost nothing here has air conditioning because it's never this hot. And so it's hot all the time. There's no escape. You can't just go inside and cool off. It's even hotter inside. So
So,
yeah, it's been fun. I'm just sweaty.
ugh, gosh. Um, so yeah, I figured we'd just get into it and
Great.
talk
Yeah,
and
yeah. You ask away. You whatever you want, and
awesome.
I'll answer because well I don't have a contract anymore, so I can say whatever the hell I want.
I hate that, man. I really do. It's
It happens. These things are I mean it's always tenuous. But yeah, it was a bit of surprise to be honest, but also not. So yeah, I think after how well received and honestly how well we did in the ratings for season three, it was a shock. But I think right now, with the way the entertainment landscape is, unless something is a juggernaut hit, they just cancel
uh,
it. I mean, like we were
it's,
top
I mean,
10 every.
ultimately, it's not about really the entertainment of the masses anymore. It's about how many billions they can make.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, basically for them, it's not about they don't want to show that like does good steady ratings and like has
Mm,
us built an audience that comes back week after week. If they want, they want it has to be the biggest thing, or it has to be like shiny and new because it
yeah.
could then be the biggest thing. And they want new subscribers to Amazon all the time. And they felt like I guess they probably got all of our subscribers and and they weren't going to get anyone new off of us. So that's what it was.
Sucks. That's insane.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining. What have you
Yeah.
been up to the last few weeks?
The last few weeks, right now I've just been traveling and doing a little bit of auditioning for different things that come through, working on writing my own stuff, all the stuff you do kind of when you're don't want to say unemployed, but unemployed as an actor and then trying to find a new job. It's always that's you fill your time because those tapes and stuff take forever to kind of like you have 3 days to do them. You got to memorize it. You got to like actually work on the script and like
Mm,
make it good or at least a version of good, and then edit it and send it off because you've got all it's all on you. So it takes takes at least 5 or 6 or 7 hours of solid work to make them happen. So
Jeez.
it's basically what you do.
Uh, so you were born in Morristown, Tennessee. We
Uh-huh.
were uh
You were.
we were raised together for a little bit. I mean, there was a few weeks, there was a while there where Nolan and I were at Charles' house every weekend for
Or we were at your pool every
yeah,
weekend. Like, I
yeah,
feel like my
for
mom abused her pool
Tony's
privileges.
pizzas
What?
and chocolate chip cookies and
Yeah,
Pokemon.
yeah.
Um, but needless to say, with that. we know that especially when we were coming up and our to our younger adult years and high school years, theater and acting was opportunities were few and far between at that
Yeah,
time. Now Morristown's got multiple opportunities, which is fantastic. But
that's great. Yeah.
um, was there a how did growing up there mostly shape the path that you got on?
I think that's a good question. I think growing up in Morristown, I think there's a there's a lovely community there of artists who were making stuff. I mean, there wasn't as much. You were
Yeah.
correct. I think the Theater Guild maybe did one show a year when we were there. And that was it.
Yeah.
Um, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they did too, but it felt like there wasn't a lot going
Yeah.
on. And like Rose Center did a few different things, and I did
Hmm.
that over the summer, which was a really nice thing to do. I didn't really get involved in anything seriously until we had something, and you did it too, called forensics, which is
Yes.
a crazy thing to tell other people because it sounds like we cut up dead bodies. And how does that relate to speech? How does that relate to acting? Um, but it is like competitive speech, debate, and
Oh,
acting. It's a really weird form of acting. I always like tell people that it is not in
yeah.
any. I mean, it's basically like it's all in a way the hardest form because you're doing a
Oh,
10-minute one man show by yourself
yeah.
for moms around the region, basically. Um, and you're like trying to guess what they would like, and
Yeah.
also trying to do something you're remotely interested in.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it's a very difficult kind of meeting of teenage minds and
Yeah.
like 30 to 50-year-old middle-aged minds of women. um,
And
Trying to make it
talking to
work,
walls.
and talking to walls and
Yeah.
talking to walls. And so that was fascinating. I mean, it is getting dressed up in a suit at 5 a.m. in the morning and getting a
Mm.
bus ride. But to another high school and doing it. But it was really actually great prep. I will say this for forensics, to digress a little bit from your question. It's great prep for auditioning because
Yeah.
it is essentially just three auditions, maybe four if you break
Yeah.
in a row, and you're sitting around and waiting. And honestly, it's great prep for getting on set because you're getting up early and sitting around and waiting and acting really hard for 10 minutes and then having an hour or two break and then acting really hard for 10 more minutes. So it is a very good training ground for actually being in film and TV as well. But so that sort of set me on a trajectory of like finding this thing that I really love to do. And, I think I love to tell stories. And I think actually being from Morristown and being from East Tennessee in the South, one of the things that I think as a culture really do well is tell stories.
Hmm.
And we're able to everyone has a voice, everyone has is an interesting character, at least in our family. Like that was always one of the things I always kind of felt like was the
Yeah.
most important thing, was to be interesting and funny and to have a good take on something, and to, be able to tell a joke. And I think that's something that kind of radiates throughout the region and throughout
Yeah.
Morristown, East Tennessee. And so
Yeah.
doing that and then doing forensics always just sort of set me on a path. And I kind of knew I didn't quite know that I wanted to be an actor, but I wanted to work in media and film and TV.
Hmm.
And so I went to college, left East Tennessee because there weren't that many opportunities in that area at the time to do those things. And went to school in Boston, went out to LA for a while, and then went to grad school in London, which is where I'm at now,
Yeah.
and kind of have been working as an actor ever since.
Which is awesome. And I've also heard that you are a big fan of the game Mafia.
I
And
am. Yeah, 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 I
yes.
am. Which I guess has been kind of like replaced by traders now, but that's a big,
Yeah. So
yeah. It's the same thing. I
that
don't
was a
understand why people
question.
think it's this like
Yeah, this
revolutionary game.
revolutionary
It's the
topic
same
because
thing.
uh that was actually a question that my wife had was, have you watched Traders?
I have watched traders. Yeah, yeah. Watched. It's funny. I'm going to be a little pretentious here. I don't love the American version as much because they're like semi-celebrities. I
Hmm.
love their, and that always is like they're entertaining, but it always feels like it's a show. It's like
Yes,
not real. Like it is real, but it's not, how reality TV is.
sure.
Huh. But the
Especially in
UK
America.
one in America, yeah. But
Yeah.
the UK one is not like they're all real people, and it's really interesting to watch kind of their how they experience it.
Hmm.
And I think that the interesting thing about traders, and it happens in Mafia too, but I think the interesting thing about traders is how just emotional people get at that round table. Like way more so than in Survivor or in like things that where like in Survivor or like another reality show, like a lot of times people are just saying like we don't want you for whatever reason, and
Yes.
and it's almost more personal because in Traders it's like well we think you're this thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
but people get really I think there's something about and it's interesting to watch as an actor because you are trying to watch people act and
Hmm.
sometimes do a good job, sometimes do a horrible job at it. But how emotional people get at that because I think it's because their integrity as a person is being questioned.
Yeah.
And I think there's something very like when you're not lying, but people think that you are, there's something very damaging about that
Yeah.
because you don't know how you have no real arsenal to convince people that you're telling the truth other than I'm telling the truth. And there's there's nothing. And so that's I think it's incredibly frustrating. And so people get really upset. And so it's very interesting to watch how just insanely emotional people get on that show.
Because then someone will be like, well, see, look how defensive you're getting. It's like,
Well, like, of
because I'm
course I'm
telling
being
the truth.
defensive. Yeah, yeah. I don't know what else to say. I'm not the traitor. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is scary, even in just the as theatrical as the American version is. And with the UK version, you still get the fantastic Alan Cumming. So
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
just get real people, you also still get his God, he's such a good host.
He's
I love
really good.
everything Alan Cumming does.
Yeah.
Um, you you can quickly see how they didn't go into the round table thinking this person, but
Yeah.
one person can
It is very
change
interesting that one little.
everything.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
like that's terrifying. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see how some people are naturally convincing and how, and also I think people at that round table you're obviously you don't want it to be you, so you're
Sure.
happy to jump on any bandwagon that is not you. And B, you often don't know who it is, so you are looking for someone to just say, yeah, it's, Alan because he like looked at the painting after they said the word traitor. And you're like, okay, yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense to
Yeah, that
me.
does make sense. That makes sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, that I can see how that, yeah, no, yeah, he's clearly very uncomfortable.
So aside from that, what are you watching? What are you reading right now?
I'm uh, just getting through a TV show on Netflix that came out called Department Q, which my friend Chloe Perry is in. It's kind of like a murder mystery thriller situation. Matthew Good is in it. I don't know if you know that actor. It's all like British. It's set in
Hmm.
Edinburgh, and Chloe's Scottish, and
I
it's really
love
good. It's
Edinburgh.
really, really interesting. It's a really interesting, like kind of offbeat version of like a very like we've all seen kind of like the police detective murder mystery
Or the
show.
Agatha
But
Christie stuff.
yeah, yeah, they do a really lovely kind of twist on it. And I think
Nice.
I thought it was very, very good actually. Yeah.
Good. Good. So I do this thing on most episodes called Talk Nerdy to Me, and it's like nerd vocabulary words. Um, and most of them are like witty little portmanteaus that I've taken the word nerd and like with everyday words and changed the definition. But sometimes they are also like popular terms throughout pop culture, whether it be books, movies, TV, that I feel that are. And I figured you could help me with some of these for the listener.
Okay. Okay.
Um, a trolloc.
Trolloc. Okay.
What are trollocs?
Trollocs are angry, angry. angry, kind of mutant, half animal, half orc, half beast. Well, that's three halves, but you get the point. Um, that that are that are waiting to attack at any moment.
So how many were a lot of those practical in the show?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, most. I mean, they add in a few in post, but most of all. They do this thing where like they're all practical and then they like enhance the effects with VFX,
Yeah.
but it was a nightmare for those guys because they were in those suits for all day for 3, 4 weeks when we were shooting that last episode and doing heavy physical action. And it was hot. We were shooting that in September and it was still warm out. And so they were, I mean, even if it's 70 degrees outside inside that costume, it's probably 90. And if it's 90, then it's 120. So they were roasting. I remember I mean, we could only film with them for specific lengths of time because
Mm.
the guys breaks. And yeah, but they're all prosthetics that are created by this guy named Nick McDudman who did, oh God, I'm gonna get it wrong. He did, I mean, he's just like a prosthetic genius. He's done so many different movies and all these different things that you've heard of before, and he's just he's outrageous. And so, and it was really cool to get to see them work because they're also on stilts. That's what I don't think it kind of translates as they don't do that in post. The physical
They are in
the
stilts.
physical effect is that they're stilts is a exaggeration, but they're basically on heels that are probably 18 inches high. And so when they're running in like those heels, and I mean they're all trained stuntmen. They've all
Yeah.
this for years, but it's an impressive feat, what
Yeah.
they were able to do. I really anytime on set when I was complaining about anything, I'd just look at their faces and be like, shut the hell up.
All right. The one power.
One power. One power is, well, this will be controversial if there's several different definitions, but the one power
Mm.
is it's essentially a power where you can access different threads of energy, is how I would describe it, to be able to manipulate the earth, or
Mm.
and into doing what you would want. So to do magic. So you can, manipulate the weather, you can heal someone, you can uh, cause fireballs, you can do
Mm.
whatever. And if you're able to touch and channel the one power, then you're a very special person because you can do magic,
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
lack of a better word.
Yeah. So that brings me to the Aes Sedai.
The Aes Sedai are a group of women who kind of rule the world. In
Mhm.
our terms, I think the way that we always looked at it on the show was that they were essentially like our version of the Catholic Church in that they wasn't like a religious organization per
Yeah.
se, but they had this power and they were stationed throughout the world in different courts and different political systems and different countries and nations to sort of oversee everything. So they kind of overlooked the entire world. It is separate than the political systems of every country, so they
Yeah.
don't necessarily. And it is like a church, Catholic church, in that way, where like you might have the Archdiocese of Argentina or whatever, who has a lot of power in Argentina, but they're not technically the government of Argentina. And
Yeah.
so that's how we looked at it. But there are also different threads. There are also different sections of the White Tower and the Aes Sedai. So some are diplomacy, some are spies, some
Mm.
are warriors, some are doctors and healers, and a variety of other things.
And I think you know a little bit about this one. Warders.
Warriors are yes, I hope I do. Basically, are men who have sort of pledged their life in service of the Aes Sedai. And so they are bonded to their Aes Sedai, and through the one power, they're able to get some special abilities. And so they have enhanced fighting abilities, and they basically serve their Aes Sedai until they die.
Yeah, which happens in the show.
Which does happen in the show, though
Yeah,
some people do lose that.
yeah, yeah. So early on, you talked about going to Emerson.
Yeah.
Um, some people would say that drama school is often known to strip actors down and to
Mhm.
rebuild them. Were there any fundamental assumptions about performance that you kind of had to unlearn?
That's a really interesting question. Um, I think the notion that drama school stripped down actors is a dated one. I will say that. I would say that my interaction with drama school when I started, but even more now, has
Mm,
certainly changed. And it's certainly a much friendlier place than probably it was in the 80s and 90s and earlier. But you were constantly unlearning things and learning things. One of the most beneficial things and the thing that I would say that most people don't think that they are getting, and when you're 18, you really think, what the hell is this? Is you spend most of your first year in any drama school taking not acting. You actually take movement and voice
yeah,
classes. And not voices and singing classes, but in just understanding your voice and how it works. And the idea is, and I think it's very important, is you have to learn A, yourself and your own movement patterns and how you are in the world. And I think in certain periods of time, this is where this idea from comes in from drama school, they would try to strip you of that and rebuild you into a different person that is an actor.
mm,
But now the idea is you have to know all of that. You have to know how people perceive you when you walk into a room because that is your casting and that's how you're going to be seen. But you also need to know that so that you can change it when you play another character. So have to
yeah,
know how you're perceived and how you walk and how you move and how you speak and how to manipulate all of that. And you have to learn some anatomy. You have to learn, you know, where your resonators are in different parts of your voice and how to access those because if you can't access those and a lot of people can't for whatever reason or maybe they just don't have the knowledge, then you can't actually act. You can't play a different character other than
yeah,
yourself. But also a lot of people have to learn how to be themselves, which is a very interesting kind of concept, and to
wow,
be comfortable with themselves.
yeah,
Uh, because ultimately, it's a little different theater than in film and TV. I would say ultimately in film and TV, even if you're playing a character, you are always playing a version of yourself. And what I mean by that is you're always playing that character through the lens of your life experience. And so, because you can't do it any other way. Like you can't judge your character necessarily, but you're always going to view I'm always going to view my characters as as a man who's grown up in East Tennessee. And so if the character's from London, I'm going to have certain assumptions about him no matter what.
yeah,
And some of the audience is going to have that too. And so I have to know who I am so that I can then view that character and make decisions based off of what I naturally bring to that character. Because ultimately, it's a little different than if you're doing community theater, you're doing theater even at a regional level, when you're auditioning and you're trying to get jobs at a international at this point level, because everyone's cast out of everywhere. They can sort of pick whoever
mm.
they and everyone's pretty good. Um, and so the thing that makes you unique is what you bring to the table. And if you don't know what you bring to the table as an artist and as an actor, then you won't be able to convince someone to give you that job, if that makes any sense.
So do you think that coming where you came from and helped with understanding character authenticity? Because,
Yeah.
especially like you mentioned, like in our family, like the dynamics, like especially in this area of the Southeast, everyone's pretty authentic to who they are, like what they
Yes.
believe, how they feel. there's not a lot of like swaying.
There's no swaying and there's very little pretense.
Yeah.
And that is something that I certainly carry with me. I think I had an acting teacher once tell me that the problem with me is that I was too authentic. Which I was like, am I not supposed to bring authenticity to every character that I'm playing? Like, if that's
Shouldn't they
not what I'm
believe?
doing, then I'm not sure what I'm doing, actually. Um, I was very taken aback by that comment, but I definitely agree. I think there's something, the voice of East Tennessee and the voice of Morristown and the voice of that region is very strong and it's very identifiable. And I think, it carries because it's full of authenticity. It's full of what people believe, and there's I, I I think. I think the people in our region a they wear their emotions for better or worse uh, on
Mm,
their sleeves. Everything it's very easy to tell someone's feeling. It's very easy to tell, what they think and where they're coming from. And obviously there are variations in that, and this is a bit of
sure.
a stereotype. But I think as a whole, that is one of the most beautiful things about where we come from.
Mm,
And I think that lends itself to playing characters who, at least for me, are authentic. To put it simply, to put it in like easy terms and dumb terms, but there's no other way. There's no other way to kind of do it. I have, maybe that's what that acting teacher was talking about. Is I have trouble playing characters who necessarily, I don't want to say are duplicitous, but who aren't who they are,
yeah.
who are trying to be something else.
Hmm. So before you were in Wheel of Time, you were in projects like Atacama, White is for Virgins, and even the show Hannah. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
what did those early experiences teach you about the craft that have carried into other projects?
Yeah, I did. So Atacama I actually wrote, and so that definitely caught. It was a short film that I made in Chile in the desert, which was really cool. And I think that anytime you step behind the scenes and behind the camera and start to put things together, I don't want to. I don't want to make acting sound less important than it is because a well-performed scene and a
Sure.
well-performed whatever is really it's great and it lifts everything. But it takes a little bit of the pressure off because there's so many other moving parts to making a film or doing theater even
Yeah.
that the acting is in some ways I won't say the easiest because it's definitely not the easiest and doing it well is definitely not easy, but it is the easiest to
So it's
it's
it's a little
less
what I tell a lot of the younger theater people when comparing like acting to like productions, like it's a little more lax.
yeah.
There's a little more
Yeah,
leniency on you than
yeah,
a lot of the other production elements.
yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, even going to something as big as Wheel or any other thing, like, yeah, like, I complain, you have to get up at 5 a.m., 4:30, 3:30, when stay up all night, whenever. But that is nothing compared to the costume department, which has spent every waking hour for the last 5 to 6 months building thousands of costumes from scratch. And all of them have to look amazing,
Yeah.
and they have to be from different worlds and different air time periods and different, they have to really span a gauntlet of different designs or the hair and makeup department, which is always some of the first people there and the last people to leave, and the crew who are setting it up, or even the behind it, like the further production, which is done the pre-production meetings, they've done the scouting, they've built the locations, the director who's gone and done the storyboards, and they spent hours perfecting everything, like literally not hours, weeks, days, months, years, sometimes perfecting everything until you get there on the day. And so that everything is as easy for you as possible to do your job, which is true. There's something about acting, and especially acting at a very film and TV and at a very high level where your mental state does directly affect the
Mm,
performance that is given. Obviously, some people are better than others at controlling their emotions and controlling how they function. But if whatever is going, it's one of the few professions that like it's very hard to check what is happening in your real life at the door
yeah.
sometimes. Sometimes you have to, and that's what it is. But everything is done on the professional production side to get to that point, and it's hours and weeks and days and months and years of work to get to that point where, like, when you're on the day and you're doing your battle sequence, everything goes off on time. There's explosions, everything is safe. Everyone is, you know, trained, and the stunt people who you're fighting with have done a month of rehearsals where you've only done 2 weeks, so that they know how to make you look better. And so everything is built around kind of the actor performance. And so when you step away from that and do the production side of it, you start to understand how difficult all of that is, and how many that the acting is really one cog in the machine of this entire story that we're trying to tell. And it's always important, I think, as an actor in a series or show or movie or film, to remember that you are but a piece of the
Hmm.
puzzle of a story. But it also, all of those projects prepared me for coming on Wheel, which is by far the biggest set. I mean, Hannah was a big set. Um, I mean, not quite as big as Wheel. And having, you know, pressure. Like, it's a lot of pressure
Mm.
too as an actor. And I think a lot of times when you graduate drama school, or even when you first move to LA, or you do these things, and people do break out, and people do get major leading roles and stuff without training, without anything. And so that's hard sometimes to wrap your head around. But when you're on a set and suddenly you're giving a speech to 100, 200 extras, and there are 5 cameramen moving around you, and there's a director, and you have to keep everything, and it's your speech, so it's just you. And suddenly everything is riding on you being calm, cool, collected, and not nervous, and able to perform every time. Because those big sets, the bigger the sets, each take is tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
And so, not like, obviously not every, but like,
Yeah.
but almost every take is at least $10,000.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, on a big, big set. So I have to, if I don't deliver every take something that is usable, and hopefully, we do 3 or 4, and one of them is amazing, and they only want to use that one. But if I don't deliver something usable on take one, then that is a waste of a lot of money and a lot of
Mm.
people's time who've done a lot of prep. So, but also knowing that, but also not letting it overwhelm you so that you're so
Yeah.
nervous that you can't. So it's a balance. And so I think having those experiences before on smaller sets that gradually got bigger led me to be able to do a much better job on Wheel than maybe I would have done had I just stepped onto it out of drama school.
Nice. So when talking about like your voice and like leading in that into like dialect and skills like
Mm.
that, when I'm working with some of the youth programs and I'm having to talk to them about uh like recently I directed Tinkerbell and some of them had to do specific accents, and for the first time I worded it to them in a very very smart way. I said, it's not just about doing a different voice to make this character. It's almost you have to go through a full psychological transformation
Yeah,
to make the voice work
work.
and be
Yeah.
authentic. Um, do you find changing your voice sometimes altering your internal landscape as a performer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think voice is such an interesting, it's an interesting kind of avenue to explore. And I wrote my thesis and my master's program about very much that. Um, I think every accent, every dialect has an internal rhythm and authenticity
Mm.
that you have to find. And it often, I find, is more important than finding a direct correlation to the sound of the accent, if that makes any sense. Like,
Yeah.
because you can practice, like, you know, Bath versus Bath. You can do all of that, and those
Yeah.
are fine. But and that's really helpful, and you have to know them. But if you can't understand the cadence and why the accent sounds the way it is, and like why inner city like New York or even like a British Cockney accent have those peaks and valleys, or even why an East Tennessee accent is slightly different than a accent from Texas, because of the geography of East Tennessee, because it is because of the mountains, so your voice has to carry differently. Or like in an
Yeah.
inner city, in like a market, like a lot of the Cockney accents are higher pitched, or New York accents are higher pitched, so that they can cut over
The
the
sound.
the crowd in the
Yeah.
market. And suddenly, once you start understanding those dynamics and why those accents sound that way, they start to unlock who that character is, and they start to unlock why those people talk that way. And then obviously, if you have that accent, suddenly you're taking on a voice, then your thought patterns are going to change, because you're concerned about different things. And so you have to, I find that doing any sort of accent is very helpful also, because it just separates you a little bit from your own natural tendencies. So it does allow you to start to think of the world in a different way, like these
Yeah.
characters, obviously. And so I do think saying it is more of a psychological transformation than just putting on an accent is very,
Yeah.
very, because it's a completely new way of looking at the world, as all characters have completely different ways of looking at the world. But, your accent's going to inform a lot of where you come from, and
Mm.
that's going to inform how your character views any situation.
This wasn't written down for me, but what was it like doing your voice for the first time with Rosamund Pike right there?
Very, very scary. Um, since I went to grad school here, I was fairly confident in a version of my British accent, and like my audition had been approved by people, and so I felt like it wasn't, it wasn't, I felt like I was fine for that. But, Rosamund is, I will, I'm gonna say, like, Rosamund is one of the most lovely people I've ever met.
Mm.
She's a wonderful leader. She's a great head of a cast. Like, she's hyper professional, and obviously an incredibly talented actress. That goes almost without saying. But she, when you meet her for the first time, is quite intimidating, especially when you're about to do a British accent and she knows you're American. Um, um, so it was very scary. I was very happy that I only had a few lines in my first episode, and that I got to say them quickly and then be done with it. And sort of ramp up to
Sure.
the longer sort
Yeah.
of to sort of speeches and monologues, and as that character developed and we developed that accent and his voice a little bit more, for me to be comfortable in it. And, by the end, it was fine. By the end, it was just like,
Yeah.
okay. And, so many people were doing different accents on that show that it felt safe. But it was not easy. It was very scary. Yeah, and when we had guest stars and stuff come through and we would do table reads with them, it was, we had some really amazing people come through, like from the British theater community, and then
Mm.
from film and TV as well. And there were a couple that I was like, they're gonna judge me again. But it's what you do. You just sort of have
Yeah.
to, like, you have to kind of get over it.
Mm.
Because that's another huge thing I would think that actually has taken me the longest to learn about acting, is like, it doesn't help you to be self-conscious. It doesn't help you to be nervous. I mean, you be nervous, like, that's fine, but like at a certain point, you just have to click
Yeah.
over, and it's going to be what it's going to be, and I don't care. And I just have to, like, calm myself,
Mm.
because the nerves, a little, I think they can propel you on stage and they can give your performance energy on stage, but on screen they just,
Yes.
this person's crazy. Basically.
Yeah.
So you just read, this person's really nervous or insane. And so you have to really you have to get very zen about,
Mm,
that's one of the biggest things about for me, the difference between film and TV is like internally, I feel like in theater you can have a like this pulsating rhythm because you're trying to like project energy out into the audience. But in film and TV, it has to almost you're Taylor, not the character, but Taylor has
mm,
to almost be like, this sounds so fuddy-duddy and like woo-woo, but like has to be like flat kind of,
mm.
it has to just be like still.
Yeah.
And the characters and like feelings and emotions take over because otherwise you're screwed. Because
Well,
I've seen my performances where I've been nervous and they do not work. It's the one thing that will for sure not work. It's the one choice that doesn't work. Unless I guess maybe if your character is really nervous, then
sure.
it can be okay. But that's rare.
Well, and she's such a, whether it's Gone Girl or the Bond movie she did back in like the early 2000s, or literally anything she does, she's she's a performer, an actor who carries such a gravitas
Yeah,
no matter what she's doing, better than most people walking the planet. Um,
yeah.
that has to be something to behold. Like,
It is. It is. I mean, she just she has this aura in person too, where I do think, it is she walks into a room and it's that I mean that I mean when someone is famous there's a bit of like you give them that space anyway because they're famous so you're like
yeah,
oh X has walked into a room and so obviously the room stops but she has a presence and she has a just this thing about her that's I mean that's why she's a movie star it's easy
yeah,
and she's very talented I'm not taking that away but
mm,
she just has a very wonderful presence of just gravitas is the right way to say
yeah,
it, especially in Wheel. I think she uses it really well. She uses it in everything, but like she displays and carries power very effectively
yes, yeah,
without feeling like she's trying, which is a very
yeah. It's
difficult
it's
thing.
it's natural.
It's just naturally
Yeah,
powerful, and I don't necessarily think that Rosamund is like would think of herself getting to know her a little bit better as like a
yeah.
naturally powerful person probably but she just has that and she has just she it just sits very easy on her shoulders but it has been funny getting to know her and like watching her play
Yeah.
um because she's very very funny and I think that that's something that people kind of discovered with Saltburn and a few of her like
Yeah.
more recent she's hilarious
Yeah.
and I think it's not like I think maybe before that movie came out, people would not say that Rosamund Pike is funny.
Well, yeah, because all of
Would
her roles were
associate
like
her with
this.
comedy,
Yeah.
but she's very funny, and in like a very specific
Yeah.
way. And so I've been very excited to see those things come out for her, and then to see that kind of expand how people know her and her range because she's very talented in that way too.
So how did the audition process go? What was it like auditioning for
Yeah.
such a major fantasy world?
I mean, they're always the same. Um, like especially post COVID.
Yeah.
You submit tapes, they go in, someone watches them, um, they judge them, and then you might get a call that or you might get a call back and you might get like notes from the casting director being like, this is actually what we want to see or we really like this but can you do this this and this and you might resubmit it's very different now there used
Yeah.
to be a very like I wouldn't say regimented but like a very like you have one audition and then you go in for the callback and then you go in to read on a TV series or film for the producers and the director and then that is presented and then maybe that is what is presented to like the network and the studio in terms of making the hiring the process. Or if it's a smaller role, then the producers and the director can just hire. Um, or you might have another step, which is to go in and test for the network in the studio, which is very intimidating and the worst process in the world. Um, but um, but now it's just very like you do that. You may have a Zoom call back with the director. You may have a meeting with the director and get the job. You may do one audition. Like I know on one of the roles on Wheel, we had one person who did one audition. She met with the producers and the director, and they gave her the job like off of one tape. Um, when they know, they know, you
Yeah,
know. And so it's very varied now. You may do a callback where you're reading with other actors, like a chemistry read. But for this particular role, because the role was smaller in season one, I don't think there were as many eyes on it as probably there would have been had it been the same size as it was in seasons two and three.
mm,
I just submitted a tape and then um, like 6 weeks later heard back that I got it.
that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
What how familiar were you with the books, the world?
Books, not very. Yeah. When you get an audition, a lot of times for those tapes, it's a 2 to 3 day turnaround
Mm,
maximum. Maybe you have a week if you're really, really lucky. Or yeah, it's very rarely a week. And so you don't have time to like read
yeah,
14 books. So you just do
it's
you
a
just Google
it's
it, do
it's a
some
large
basic.
universe.
It's a large universe, so you can't really dive into it as much. So, and for this project and mo a lot of projects that are like higher profile and that are um, bigger in name, they change all of the names of the characters and half the dialogue anyway.
Yeah,
So, so you don't know which character you're
yeah,
auditioning for. You don't know, none of the words are the same thing as what's in the book. So you kind of just, and most of the time, half the
yeah,
time when it comes through, although people know, so you can find out through your agent, oh, it's this. But like half the time, I believe this was called, I believe we had a different fake name every season. I think for the first season, it was called Tales of Prophecies Foretold. um, and then I think the last season was Under the Velvet Sky. So it was just like very random. Like
yeah,
they mean, and like most of the time, your agent can figure out, like if especially if it's a big project, like oh, this is they're saying it's this, but this is actually X. This is
yeah,
this Marvel film, or this is this DC movie, or this is this comic book series. It's been really popular, and so that you have some idea of what world it is. But a lot of times, you also only get like a page, two
mm,
pages, 3 pages, and none of the names are the same, and none of the dialogue is the same, and not it's all fake.
yeah,
And so, so you're like, okay, so I'm auditioning for a character that doesn't really exist in this scene, other than
yeah.
they put some. I remember in the second season they wrote a scene with my character and one of the characters that they were auditioning for, and I had to read with all of these people who were like at the final stages of casting. Our characters never meet in the show. They just put us together so that if it leaked to the fans, they wouldn't have no idea what characters these
Wow.
possibly could be because I literally never have a scene with this person. But they wrote the scene between these two characters just in case someone
Wow.
found out. But I mean, it was written in that other character's voice, and obviously my character's voice.
Well, yeah.
But uh, yeah, no. I was like, it was a pretty good scene too. I was a little disappointed that it didn't exist.
So, what was your first impression of uh Maxim as you started to read the early stages of it and go into it?
Yeah, yeah. I think he changes a lot through the 3 seasons. I think, especially in season three.
Yes.
But I think the first season, I really liked, and one of the things I wanted to bring out, and I said this in a couple of our the interviews I've done for, is that, the Warders are kind of these soldier warrior characters. And in the books, outside of Moraine's Warder, who's called Lan, they're
Mm,
not super well developed, to be honest, as characters. Um, and they're sort of just this kind of like stoic background. They pop in and out. and I wanted to, and he was written this way. Like not every soldier is the same. Not every, not every person who's served in the military or as a cop is this stoic
Yeah.
sort of stone-faced human. I mean, there are tons of them that are, and the stereotype kind of exists for a reason, obviously. But I think that but I wanted to bring something else to him, and so I kind of wanted him to feel a little bit like this boy that was sort of lost and was just kind of having a good time with it. And he's kind of funny in the first season and has some jokes and that, and that's it. And then suddenly throughout the seasons 2 and 3, you see, and like to be fair to him, the world's been pretty easy for him as a warder up until that point. I think he's been running away from a lot of his stuff in his past up until
Mm.
that point. But and maybe his like home life wasn't amazing. But I think his life since joining Warderhood has been great. So it's kind of just like a big party. He's with the two people he loves. They get to go fight, but Alana has magical healing powers. So if you get into too much trouble, she's just going to heal you. So who cares? And you're kind of get to live in this palace, and it's amazing. um,
Yeah.
and so I think as the world got darker within the show and the stakes got higher and suddenly the danger was real and you start to see it dawn on him that this is serious and this is not something to be taken lightly, and obviously by the third season there are hyper direct consequences for him.
Mm.
uh, and I think that gradual, like, he's a little older than maybe like a teenager, but I always like to say you kind of get to see his adolescence until him kind of accepting kind of
Yeah,
his
you
place
you
as a
get to
man
see
and as a
you get to
warrior.
see him going from saying like I'm fun
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah,
now teaching people how to kill things.
yeah,
Like
exactly,
because he's also a hell of a warrior. So
exactly, exactly.
seeing that
And taking
arc
on
was
that responsibility in a different way than I think he would have probably taken it on in the first season,
mm.
or even maybe at the start. And so I think I think it's a lovely journey and it's a lovely growth for him,
Mm.
and for me to get to play because I think it's a really interesting story and character.
So Maxim is in this polyamorous relationship with Alana and Ivan. Uh, how do you approach portraying that complex dynamic, um, building the foundations with the characters as well as the individuals playing them?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously I've never been in a polyamorous relationship, so I'll say that. So you kind of have to start with the building blocks. I talked to a few people I know who have been,
Mm.
and you don't want to. I think it was very important to the show and to us to not play it as some sort of joke. It's not,
Yeah.
these very serious to these characters, and it is a serious thing to a lot of people, and who that's how they live their lives. And so that was the most important thing, and to like really start to see how it works, and there it's interesting because I think all like every couple, um, all polyamorous relationships work differently, but the way we kind of built it, and the way the writers built it, was that the Ivan character was sort of the center,
Mm.
and that we both loved him, and Alana and Maxim sort of were at the other. He was the center of the triangle or
Yeah.
the V, and then Alana and Maxim were over here, and they loved each other, but it wasn't the same.
Yeah.
Um, and so you start to really investigate. Okay, well, Maxim's the last one to join. How long has he known Ivan? What are his feelings towards Alana? Is there jealousy towards Alana? Is there weirdness towards Ivan when he's with Alana? Do Alana, do Ivan and Maxim team up against Alana, which they do, and like the power dynamics are really interesting to kind of explore when it's three versus two, because there's more to use. And also, you are defining three relationships. You're defining the relationship between the three characters, the relationship between Ivan and
Mm.
Maxim, and then also the relationship between Maxim and Alana.
Mm.
And so you have to. It's not. It's more. It's quite a bit complicated. Um, and then you factor in the actual actors that you're working with,
Yes.
and who I adore. We switched actors for season 3 because of
Yeah.
a conflict. And and Manny was wonderful. Anthony was wonderful, who came in and did that one bit at the start of season 3. Um, and had very different relationships with both of them, but very good relationships. But Priyanka and I have always just kind of clicked since the beginning.
You can tell on your all social media presence.
um,
You two
and
click.
so and so, she's I can be a pretty like reserved person, and she's not, but she brings out
Yeah.
some fun kind of sides of me, and I think I hopefully bring out some fun sides of
Yeah.
her. And I mean, when you're in Prague and you don't know anyone, the people who you have your scenes with are become your friends.
Yeah.
Like that's inevitable on almost any show that you're on, is the person, hopefully, the person that you share most of your scenes with is the person that you're the closest to, and you
Sure.
become best friends with, or good friends with. And I think certainly by season 3 for her and I, it's the most wonderful thing about being on a television show
Mm.
versus doing a film or even a play is like we've known each other for 4.5, 5 years at that point when we're filming. There's a shorthand. We're very comfortable with each other. There's nothing that feels weird or awkward or
Mm.
off limits. If we have to do a scene where we're yelling and screaming at each other, like we both feel comfortable just letting it all out and going 100%, and then laughing about it after the take is over. And so that makes it feel really, it's so much fun when you're getting to go to
Yeah.
work with who gets you and gets your acting style and your sense of humor, and who brings something different from you from your work, and who's has a very different acting style than me, and which is wonderful,
Yeah.
but very, very different, and so and challenges me in a different way, and it's fun to volley off of them. And so it's been that was a very, very wonderful experience in getting to work with her and both of them. But obviously, because I had spent so much time with Priyanka,
Mm.
definitely, that was, it was easy. I mean, there was like our relationship in the show in many ways, I would say it mirrored our relationship in real life exactly. But we brought a lot of our dynamic to those characters and those dynamics, especially in the third season. And also it's just
Mhm.
sort of what naturally happens on a TV show is like the actors and writers and everyone spends so much time together that you start writing to the strengths of the actors or the relationships that you see forming and what's
Yeah.
working and what's not working and what is appealing, and like you can tell, oh, these two people have really great chemistry together, we should write to that because it
Yeah.
it works. And so that's that is honestly why I think most television shows start working much better in
Hmm.
their second, third, and fourth, like further on. It's because everyone knows each other and it's written in a way that like complements everything that's going on,
Yeah.
rather than we're writing these characters and then we're going to find someone to like fill it, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Um, One of my favorite scenes in that first season is the dinner scene with
Oh,
the
yeah.
warders, because it's a key moment to start seeing these characters established and fleshed out. And what are some of your favorite moments from that, filming that?
I think that scene works so well because we all just had a lot of fun that night. We
Yeah.
were all a little punch drunk because we'd shot. It's a split day, so you shoot a little bit during the day and then you go into a night scene. And so we'd shot something earlier that was just kind of like, I don't exactly remember what it was, but it was
Yeah.
like little bits and bobs of us people like in the camp. It wasn't it was acting, but we were all basically extras. I'll put it that way. We were all just kind of like walking around. It was fun, but so we were all kind of silly and we'd all been hanging out, and then we got to that scene, and they had all this. They wound up giving us, because normally you're just drinking water, but they actually put all of this like non-alcoholic beer in the glasses, so it just sort of felt like we were hanging out.
Yeah.
And And it felt suddenly, instead of drinking water and like kind of just feeling like you're playing pretend, like it tasted like beer. So, and there was no, obviously it was not alcoholic, but like it tasted like beer and there was an actual campfire. And suddenly it just felt, and also when you're shooting at night, it's kind of nice because it's dark. And so you can't see the cameras and you can't see all the people around and you can't, like, all of a sudden everything just sort of closes in almost like it's theater.
Yeah.
And so it feels very, I just thought that scene turned out really well because it felt so intimate and it really did feel like a bunch of people just who knew each other quite well hanging out and
Yeah.
shooting the shit.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. You all also kind of each one of you redefined warrior masculinity
Yeah.
and uh, showed a different openness in the genre. Um, because like in fantasy, that's it's typically a different way. Like you said, all the soldiers, especially like elves and all that, they're stoic. They're shut down. Um, how'd you navigate showing emotional openness in a genre like fantasy and making it work? Like it like
It's a
like
great
it
question, and
like it's
I'm
been a
happy.
thing the entire time.
Yeah, I'm happy you picked up on it. I think it was very important to everyone who was on the show. I think the warders they sit in a weird position
Yeah.
uh, in terms of their warrior abilities. Because truthfully, if a woman can shoot fire out of her hands, she doesn't really need that with a sword. Um, if she can bring down lightning, she doesn't need a dude with a spear. So, um, I mean, well, depending on how you look at it. But I think so in that way, we always looked at it as like these people, these men are as much emotional support and and that's as much of their duty as protecting them. It's protecting them. I think at some point one character says in the show, or it's much protecting them from themselves as protecting them from outside forces. And so I think that's how we always looked at it. And I think it goes back to what I was saying. Like, I've known plenty of people who've served in the military. I've known plenty of people who are cops, who are fire, who do these sorts of things. And they're not all shut down human
Hmm.
beings. I mean, they might you have to have a little bit of that, I think, when you're on the battlefield. I think you have to have a little bit of like stoicism and like, you know, charging forward no matter what. But in between that, you're still a human being. You just
Mm.
still have things that you love and people you're vulnerable with and people that you are, you laugh with and people and we're all human. We all show different sides to different people. So obviously with your Aes Sedai for our show, like those scenes that most of the time that we had with them are quite emotional and she's the one person who both of us are the one person who we can show our vulnerabilities to.
Mm.
And so if we're not showing our vulnerabilities if I'm not being vulnerable with Alana, I'm not going to be vulnerable with anyone. And so I think that was what was nice about the end in season 3 is the scene with some of the townspeople is you actually get to see Maxim, a different side of Maxim, where he is more of the warrior, where he is more of the leader, where he is a little bit more stoic. And, I think that scene where he's training kind of the guy, the townsfolk with a spear, and then he
And
sends
the
them
lawnmower.
away, and
Yeah.
then Lana comes over and he's like, we're all going to die here.
Yeah.
I think it's a nice kind of example of what I'm talking about is like, you're one like when you're a teacher, you're one way with your students, and you're a completely different way when you're with the faculty.
Yeah.
Like it's just it's different.
Yeah.
How your relationship with different people are different. So I think it was nice for us because you very rarely lift the veil of that, and I think also because so many of those fantasy shows or so many of those kind of like war films, it's all men, and it's a lot of like um there's a lot more posturing and stuff that goes on between them, and there's a lot more like
Yeah.
about wanting to show emotions. Whereas our show, the battles are fought by the mostly women in terms of like magic, and so I think having a predominantly female cast and having that prominently female characters in some of those scenes puts a different take on it and puts a different spin on it and requires different things from the male characters. And yeah, I just thought it was really important. I think the
Yeah.
show thought it was important to do different things with those characters, and I think we pulled it off. I'm very proud of that
Hmm.
show.
Absolutely. Where did the backstory that Maxim has, the
Yeah,
privileged upbringing, his father trying to
yeah.
kill him, um, was that all like just shooting the shit, thinking, what if we,
Well, there's that one. He has that one line where his father tried to kill him when he was 12, in season one.
hmm
And so like even if we never dove into it, which we never really did,
yeah,
in the show, like you have to know where your character's coming from.
where your character's coming
And
from,
then,
what they're
I thought,
saying, what they're doing.
yeah. And where because it informs everything. And so I think for him, like I just always felt like, listen, I'm not a rich kid. I didn't grow up that way, but I know a lot of people who, have rich parents who like want to run away from it. And
Yeah.
like the idea of going and joining and being a warder for him and his family would be his family would just see this stupid, like he has a death wish. And so, and I think he might have seen it that way, but if there was any other option, but I don't think he did. And so I just starting to build from there and wanting to, have one of those characters, because Alana doesn't come from a place of privilege, and Ivan, we decided, didn't come from a place of
hmm
privilege. So having one of those characters come from a place of privilege, and Lan, the other Marines
Yeah.
worker
Yeah.
obviously is from a fallen land and a king, so it wasn't going to be that, but it was going to be, he came from like a minor noble house, you know, and
He
I
didn't
don't know if
really
people
want
watch.
for anything.
Yeah, he never wanted for anything, and so this feels like an adventure to him,
Yeah.
and it feels like a great escape.
Yeah.
I don't know if people in East Tennessee will get it, but I did one interview, and having been over here, the woman who did it called it Eaton, my accent, Eaton by way of Shoreditch, which Eaton is a very posh, very private school
Yes. Yes.
in the UK where
Very
like the
well known
king
for its
went,
fencing.
basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Shoreditch is it's like Brooklyn. It's a very nice area
Yeah.
actually now, but it's like hipster, sort of gentrified,
Yeah.
like I'm really rich, but I'm gonna go open a coffee shop in a
Yeah.
yo-yo street, and that's going to be what my life is. um and so that's kind of how I pitched Maxim through the series, and then and that's kind of how I saw him coming into it, was like this was like a fun, or not fun, this was his only option, but coming from a different place of
Yeah.
he didn't want to have to go back and face his parents again.
Well, and it also gives a good dynamic that at least one of you are from privilege for
Yeah,
that triangle,
yeah,
because
exactly,
you're going to
exactly.
see the world different. They're going to see the world different. And that brings
Yeah, and I
in,
think one of the things that we probably would have gotten into more if we'd done another season, um, maybe we still will if pigs fly, but is I think Maxim was would have been very, because he grew up in like kind of like a court situation and political situation, he would have been much better at politics and helping Alana through sort of dealing with the fallout from what happens at the end of season three within the kind of ranks of the Aes Sedai, and like navigating that. And so I think that would have been something to watch for, as we went forward. But that's for another time.
a question we did get from a listener, Heath. He asked, is there any talk of another network or somebody picking up? Because he enjoyed the show.
Oh, well, good. I'm glad he did. He knows as much as I do. Sadly. I don't know. I mean, there's been a lovely kind of fan outpouring
Hmm.
of, they've had billboards in Times Square, they've had billboards here in Leicester Square, they have billboards in Los Angeles, they've flown banners over the studios, they have a petition with like 200,000 signatures. It's one of the bigger, I think, bigger, if not the biggest, kind of save
Yeah,
TV series fan campaigns
yeah,
that there's ever been. So that's hopeful.
yeah,
And that certainly, I think people are paying attention to it. The issue that our show will always have, and is that it's really expensive to
yeah,
make.
yeah. Well, I participated in the petition, uh,
Oh, good. Well, thank you.
because I loved it. I liked it more than Ring of Power, and I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd. So, um,
Yeah.
and I guess the other thing I have to ask is, I think in an interview or maybe on I can't remember if it was a carpet I saw, um, you talked about very aptly calling season three darker and messier.
Yeah.
Uh, how do you, how did you prepare for that coming from season one and
Um,
two, knowing that we're about to get in a darker place?
well, I think we always knew, like, by the time I hadn't read it for the audition, but by the time we got into season three, you knew kind of where the
Yeah.
world was headed. And I think that I think that the show had found a stronger voice. I think by the time we were by the end of season two, and I think by the time the scripts were coming in for season three, you know, it's also easier. One of the hardest things now that I've been on this, I can say this, is making the first season of a show because no one knows what it is. So
Mm,
we're all because no one's seen it. So we're all kind of guessing and like obviously like there's ideas and like there's a vision. There is a vision. I won't say that there's not a vision, but you have directors come in and someone different directs every two episodes on our show. Sometimes it's every one episode. But like, you have a director for the first two episodes who thinks the show is this, and then you have a director for the second two episodes who thinks the show is this.
yeah.
And someone's like, well, no, it's this. And there is, the showrunner is the person who's doing the overall tone, but like even then, like everyone's still trying to figure out, like the actors are like, well, is it like Game of Thrones or is it lighter? Like, is it Lord of the Rings? Like, where should I pitch my performance? And the directors are trying to figure it out. And so by the time you get to season two, and then especially season three, everyone knows exactly what the tone is. Everyone
Mm,
knows what the world is. Everyone knows kind of, okay, this is how I pitch it. Like, Wheel is a little campier is not the right word, but it's a little bit more over the top in terms of performance than maybe something like Game of Thrones, which is very um
yep.
you know, yeah.
From
There's
the
no,
get-go.
um,
Yeah.
it's serious acting for serious people. Like there's no smiling.
Yeah.
Whereas Wheel is a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more joyous. Even if we're going to a darker place, those darker places, and it gets very violent and gritty, but those
Yeah.
darker places are, they're,
But there are
for
there are
Saber.
moments of levity.
Yeah, there are definitely moments of levity. There's a lightness to a lot of the characters, and I think Game of Thrones has a through line of despair
Mm,
almost through it. And our show has a through line of hope, even when
hmm.
you're negative things are happening. And so I think that gives it a very different tone. And even the villains, like the Forsaken, are so fun. They're like so big and like, they're almost like these super villains in some ways.
Yeah.
And and so that is so you're like, okay, so I can do this rather than this, and I can have more fun with these lines, and I can, make sure that, I can bring that levity to it, and it's not out of place. Whereas if I did that line that way on
Hmm.
Game of Thrones, it would be what
Yeah.
is happening?
Yeah.
And so that allows the actors to be more confident in the choices that they're making. And so, yeah, I think I forgot what your question was, but
Just how did you prepare for such
how did I prepare
intensity?
for season three? So I think I don't know that I did any specific prep for season three. I knew I was going to have a lot more stunts to do, so I got in a little bit better shape. I made sure I was in really good shape going into season three, to be able to.
Better than you already were in?
Yes, yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't get into really good shape until, I mean, I
Oh,
was in good shape in season two, but I was in really good shape for season three.
okay.
You know, and because those stunts are hard, man.
Well, yeah, because
Well,
like
I was 28, 29 when I started, and I was 33 in season three. So, you know, that's not a huge period of time, but you know,
it's
there's
still
definitely there was definitely a day I could not walk after we filmed those stunts. Where
because
it was like it was a lot of Advil and a lot of pain. Um,
a lot of
so
Tiger Bomb.
so yeah. So just trying to that was really more of what the prep was. You know, I think we were all kind of excited for to do season three when it came through
Mm,
because the scripts were just and we also like because we you know a lot of that stuff came in and we were filming through this around the strike and so you know it was they came in and they were great and we were just excited to work. You know.
yeah. Because you spend most of season three covered in blood,
Yeah.
in battle mode,
Yeah.
um, working with real fire, uh, the sequence like Tarvalon. Um, I mean, how do you stay in it, especially with real
You know,
fire?
you know, when there's real fire behind you, it's not hard to stay in
Yeah.
it. It's not hard to feel like you're in a battle when things are exploding around you. Um, you know, all of those things we rehearse so much.
Yeah.
You know, it's basically you just do it over and over and over again. And our stunt team is incredible and they're crazy. There's the crazy, insane Czech guys who the first time they show you a stunt, you're like, you're crazy. I'm not going to be able to do that. You're kidding, right? And then like 2 weeks later, you're doing it and you feel pretty confident in it. You know, that particular day was really hard because you do all of those stunts and then obviously that moment where spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it where Ivan dies
Yeah.
we had I think maybe 15 minutes at the end of the day to get those shots of like Priyanka him dying and Priyanka and I having our reactions and that's pretty difficult I think as hard as all the stunts are actually as hard as any of that is and it's really hard kind of like those big moments where you have to have this huge outpouring of emotion
Mm,
when you're trying because you have to get it you obviously just can't you have to be in it before action you know and you can't just turn it on it's very difficult to be in that moment and keep and have it come right when you want it to come if that makes
mm,
any sense so you're like you're sitting there waiting for the call cut and then there's a problem with the light there's a problem with focus whatever the problem is and you're like it's I'm it's just coming like I can't control it basically
yeah.
and so but you, also the secret is like I find, and a lot of actors will tell you this, like there's only so long you can cry, and before
Yeah.
you just can't cry. It's like a physical thing. You just
Yeah.
can't do it anymore. And so you're just sort of like, ah, okay, please just yell action, just do it. Or like we were huddled over each other. So like, just hold on, Priyanka, hold on. You just gotta hold on one more second. Come on. And so we're and she's like, come on, and, you're both just like yell action because I'm ready to go. And you're like, I don't care, but obviously, but they have to have the shot ready. But it's a tricky those things are really tricky to get the timing right.
Um, Another thing I've noticed about Maxim's arc is it's about um coming into responsibility, accepting responsibility, and finding um agency
Yeah,
in uh, a world where, like you said earlier, you're powerless compared to
yeah,
magic, you
yeah.
know. Um, uh, h- how do you think about the relationship between external powerlessness and internal strength balances in Maxim's world?
That's really it's a really deep question, Tyler. Thank you for picking. No, no. It's a great question. I think I mean I think Maxim has to find it.
Mm,
I think and I think there's the growing pains are obvious. I think I would find myself if I was in Maxim's position to be very I don't know that I could do it actually. I think it would get to me probably at a certain point of I have no say over my life. I have
mm,
no say over where I'm living. I have no say over what I'm doing. And if this woman says we need to go into battle right now, even if I don't believe in it, I have to go into battle right now. Even if I think it's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. Um, that would be really hard for me. And so I think the challenge, and it's one of the things that we wanted to bring out, especially given what happens to those two characters in the books further on down the line, which is a huge spoiler, but it's not that if we do this the fourth season, then it would be a big part of the fourth season. But that battle of agency is really important when it comes to Alana and kind of in and figuring out kind of as a warder where your line is, but also finding strength within figuring out where that line is. And also finding strength in it's one of the things that I think that we did to go back to your previous question about warders and masculinity. One of the things about those relationships is they're typically flipped gender wise. Typically, it's the man with the power and the woman who is the support.
mm,
And and it is the woman or the female character who has to somehow be able to find agency within her ability to support
mm.
man. And so one of the things we were trying to do with this storyline is have a male character have to figure out how to find agency in his role as supporting a woman who is powerful. Um, and he finds that eventually. But Maxim finds it his way through love and through, and also just, you know, I think, and through some self-confidence, because I think actually one of the things that's missing, and one of the things with the scenes that maybe is missing is like Maxim doesn't really believe he's very good at his job, and would like he thought that Ivan was much better, and he didn't really, he was there for fun, and he was the fun warder, like
Yeah.
Ivan would save you, and I'll throw parties, and so him coming back in to save Alana and like being able to actually save her life, and even though it was messy, him being able to do that was really a step in him being like, okay, I can do this and I can step up and I can do my job and find
You
me.
you can solve the trauma inside while still aiding your loved one.
Yes. Yeah. Which is hard, it's a hard thing to kind
Yeah.
of come to terms with. And, typically when we're hurting, we not typically, but a lot of people, when you're hurting from grief, you pushed your loved ones away.
Mm,
And that's what they're both kind of doing. That's certainly what he's doing at the start of season three. Because you're hurting so much that they possibly couldn't understand your hurt. And so finding a way to be useful and finding a way to channel that anger into action, I think was helpful. And I think him coming in and knocking out all those white cloaks and saving her was that for
yeah.
him. Even though it took him being, leaving, and her not coming with him and her being like, no, this mission is more important than you are. And it's more important than us.
Mm,
And I think for him, I don't know that the mission will ever be more important than his love for Alana, but he realized that his love for Alana was enough for him to invest in the mission as much as she is.
Yeah.
Um, so that, yeah, so I think that's that, sort of
Yeah.
growing up angle and finding, okay, power within that structure and also she needs him. Like
Yeah.
she's a basket case without someone.
What's been the most rewarding thing about playing Maxim?
Um, you know, I think for me, figuring out, I mean, just everything that I had to do to play that character, like learn how to ride a horse, learn how to use all these weapons, do an accent. Um, it's all really hard. And really hard to be confident.
Yeah.
Um, to go back to a little bit of what, I think Maxim goes through the season three is like I had to go through this process of like, talking about doing it in front of Rosman of like feeling, okay, I'm here, I'm good enough to do this, and I am, good enough to leave my mark on this show and claim ownership of that. And in that space. Because if you don't, going back to saying like if you're nervous on camera, it'll eat you alive. If you're not confident, it'll also eat you alive. It sees everything.
Yeah.
That is and so so getting to that point, and feeling especially by the end of the third season, like I know what I'm doing, and not that I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing,
Yeah.
but really like owning, stepping on the set and owning the scene and owning the space and being like, I am not just an actor, I'm an actor who's leading this scene on a $200 million television show.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and if I screw this up, it is $100,000 take, but but that's on me and someone trusts me enough to put me into this
Yeah.
position. And there's something quite empowering. And
Yeah.
so I think that was the most rewarding thing about playing Maximum for me.
So over the course of the show, uh, you can tell in your all's performance, uh, that it was very important to show this representation of not just polyamorous, but bisexual storyline, LGBTQ, you know, that it was very, you could tell that it was very important to treat this respectfully. Um, how have, I've noticed there's been a lot of positive outpour from people of that community
Yeah.
around that. So how has that felt for you all knowing that like, oh, it worked. It translated. We were respectful, and how do you
Yeah.
feel moving forward in the world of fantasy that perhaps after this it can be handled with care moving forward in other projects?
Um, I feel like we did the absolute best job that we could in representing that
Hmm.
community and representing a variety of different ways to be a part of that community. Um, and I think that I think the thing that I love about Wheel of Time the most for that sort of piece of it is that we didn't make it into any sort of issue for any of the characters.
Hmm.
It was never, we never needed to do a big coming out episode. We never needed, like, it literally was never discussed as a problem or as anything of note, really. I
Yeah.
mean, a little bit with the polyamory, but that was just mostly to be because, one of the characters from a small town, like, oh my God, it wasn't like negative. It was just like,
Yeah.
oh, they do that. Um, and so I think that's a huge step forward in terms of representation within that particular genre of
Mm.
film and TV. I worry about what it looks like moving forward because I feel like in terms of representation, we're in many respects in our country right now, we're moving backwards, not forward.
Agreed.
Um, and I think that there will be, I think that there is a false idea that that is what audiences want, is that that maybe we've progressed too much and they want to pull back because, or there's a idea that I think there's an idea of like right now, like we don't want to offend these people, or we've gone too woke and now we need to pull it back, basically, is
Yeah.
what, the general zeitgeist is in the
Yeah.
entertainment industry. And so I worry about that moving forward, but I like the imprint that Wheel has made, and I think that that will continue in certain aspects, and it already has. And I think that it will only grow. But I think that it may not grow as fast as it probably should. And the spectrum of, I think we did a lovely job with Max and Milana and Ivan and a lot of our other characters, but and obviously Moraine, Swan being this lesbian couple at the center of the show,
Hmm.
all of those things are beautiful, and I hope that that continues. But I honestly I don't fully know if it will continue heavily in the next
So
5 to
you
10
think that
years.
there may have to be another renaissance to
Yeah, I
kind
think
of,
it'll have to. The entertainment industry is this thing that always overreacts to whatever it is. Like, I do understand a little bit of the pushback from the period of like the late kind of teens where it seemed like every show had to have, you know, tick every diversity box no matter what. And if, I do get that I do understand some pushback from that.
mm,
Um, and some just like recalibrating. But at the certain time, I feel like, again, we've swung so far in this opposite direction of no show can have this. It's only going to be a straight white male protagonist. And
yes.
we're only going to do, these boring shows that you've seen 27 times before,
Mm,
because that's what it seems like people want. And like, we actually don't want a variety on Amazon. Sorry, I probably shouldn't say this, but we don't want a variety of shows on Amazon. We only want 16 different versions of Reacher. And so I feel like that might be where we're headed at for a little bit.
for a
I do think
stint.
it will swing back, but hopefully quicker rather than later.
Agreed. Yeah. um, I the fantasy genre, as we were just talking, has not typically been diverse
Yeah.
outside of LGBTQ. The
Yeah.
other representations, do you see that at least maybe maintaining, like,
I'm
because
not
even in uh, uh, the spinoff of Game of Thrones, people were bitching about, you know, African American characters playing, lords in Westeros, and it's like they existed. Like, this is, so
well,
do
yeah.
you think that um even as far
I
as
I, I
that'll
don't
go?
I don't know. I don't know. I think that I think it goes into a broader issue with the entertainment industry overall, and that I think that we are, and this is probably 30 and Nerdy is maybe not the right place to mention this, but I will say, I do think that maybe the entertainment industry is a little too reliant upon established IP. And when I say IP, I mean intellectual property.
Yes.
That means Marvel comics, DC comics, even books, anything that has already been created before. Right now, entertainment and TV and film are like, well, that's the only thing that people want to see. So we aren't going to do very many original ideas. We're only,
Yeah.
for big budget stuff, we're only going to approve something like Wheel of Time, which has a built-in fan base and a built-in audience. But what happens with that, or House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, but what happens with that is you suddenly have this interesting kind of problem, and that you have to, especially with something like Wheel, which has a big built-in fan base, but not big enough to support its budget as it was. Um, you have to bring in new viewers and
Hmm.
appeal to a audience in 2025, while also simultaneously staying as true to the source material as you possibly can while adapting it for a different medium and making significant, sometimes having to make significant changes for a variety of reasons that don't often even make sense to the fans of the books because they don't understand television production, they don't understand a myriad of different reasons and things. And so what that does is then it pisses off a certain section of your hardcore fans. And then you have this built-in negative press and negative press engine that or voice or water cooler around your show.
Yeah.
From the very beginning, before the show even airs, because they may not like the casting, because they may not agree with certain choices. And so you're coming out of the gate with a show that already has people giving it bad reviews when they haven't even seen
Yes.
it. And for political or belief and or whatever reasons. And so suddenly your built-in fan base is now the worst thing possible for you because they are trying to sink your show or they're like trying to give you criticism, but that criticism is and if you don't listen to their criticism, then you hate the source material, you hate the books, you hate whatever the original product was, the original existence, the original IP, which is not true. There, and so I don't quite understand. I think I think hopefully in a few years we'll come to the conclusion that like maybe remaking things 37 times or maybe being beholden to, this unfortunate kind of internet kind of trolldom and fandom is not necessarily the best way to make art. And it doesn't necessarily even make the best version of an adaptation of that material, you know. And so I just but so I think until we get rid of that sort of like Reddit being our biggest example of, literary criticism in the States right now, or entertainment criticism in the States right now, that until we do that, we won't progress from that,
Yeah.
because not, it's a book. My version of this book is going to be different than your version of this book. It's going to be different from this person's version of the book. The themes I pick out, the things that are important to me, the characters that are important to me are going to be very, very different.
Hmm.
So what appeals to me is not going to appeal to you. And like and that's fine. And like you can but like and just because something is a word for word or scene for scene or a close adaptation of the book does not actually make it a better version of that show or book product or whatever. It just happens to make it a more similar adaptation
It's
into something.
almost like they forgot the definition of adaptation.
I do think that there's and but there's a very, I think, not just in entertainment, but there's a very like, if you don't agree with me, I'm taking this ball and going home
Yeah.
and not letting anyone play kind of
Yeah.
mentality in the world right now. And until
Yes.
we kind of change that, it's going to continue to be a bit shit. But I hope that I actually just hope that like, as much as it's fun to do these big adaptations, and I shouldn't say too many bad things about it because I've just on one. I kind of hope that we start having more original ideas and
Original. Yeah.
start doing like really, because like at one point, all of these classic films and all of these things that we love that are like, that we harken back to are were original.
Hmm.
So why don't we just try to make original stories for today rather than the, listen, I love Jurassic Park. I love it. It's my favorite film of all time. I don't know why we need 37 of them.
Agreed.
you know,
Agreed.
um, and it would be great to pour those resources and those funds into something that then you can launch a new franchise off of, or a new idea, or
And
new
yeah.
superheroes, or new whatever.
Yeah.
But that's not safe. That puts the people who make those decisions at risk. Whereas if they make something that's based off an IP, they can say this book sold 100 million copies. Like, how was I supposed to know it wasn't going to be a hit? And then their job is protected.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how that goes.
I saw another part of Maxim's arc as being almost showing the difference of being heard and being listened to.
Hmm. Interesting.
Um, so in your own words, what is the ultimate lesson of just Maxim?
Um, I think the ultimate lesson of Maxim is, well, I think it's different for probably different for the viewers and for me, but I think the ultimate lesson is oh, it's a good question. Stalling. Uh, I I think it goes back to what you said is like is finding your agency within the circumstances that you're dealing with
Hmm.
and that you're given. Because we're not always given or granted our dream circumstances, our dream job, our dream position, our dream, any of our dreams, really.
Right?
Sometimes you find yourself in things that you don't want to be doing with people you don't necessarily, well, you don't want to be with, or whatever it is. And, there's a beauty in learning how to make the best of that and how to find your place within that and to find happiness within that. I think it's tricky because I would always like to say if you're not happy with what's happening in your life, you should change it. But there's also a part of that is sometimes if you're not happy with what's happening in your life, then you have to change your mentality about what's happening in your life.
Yes.
Um, because then, you can find happiness. One of a friend of mine, you know, has a very interesting kind of philosophy and something sometimes I disagree with it and get into arguments about it, but I think it's like whatever version of what's happening is the best version of what's happening because it's the only version of what's happening right
Hmm.
now. So like if like you go out, I mean this is a silly, small, very tiny kind of philosophical example, but if you know, are trying to go for a walk in the rain or go to the park to have a picnic or something like that, and it starts pouring down the rain, you know, that is the only version of what's happening. So you have to make the best of it. So, and that could be running inside, or it could be, just like enjoying
Yeah.
that moment and seeing the beauty and what's happening and having a picnic in the rain and trying to find the upside to it.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a little bit of that in that storyline with Maxim of like, Ivan's dead. He, this is not how he saw his life ending up,
Yeah.
but here's where he's at. And he can either be miserable or he can find the joy and the responsibility and the power in it. And sometimes that's what you need because sometimes you don't have an option to do anything else. You don't have the option to run. You don't have the option
Yeah.
to change your life completely. Sometimes, right now, you're not living your dream. You're working as a janitor, you're working at Starbucks. Make the best of it
Hmm.
because it may be temporary, but it is how you're spending, the next at least the next 8 hours of your life. So, you might as well enjoy it because if you don't, then you're the only person making yourself miserable.
Are there any uh after spending almost 5 years in fantasy, are there any genres you'd like to venture into?
I'd like to just do something in my own accent. Um, um, uh, I'd like to not have to worry about that and break down every scene in terms of sounds. Um, uh, I did another project earlier this year where I sort of thought I was playing American and then and did the table read as an American. And then right before we yelled action on my first scene, the director came up and was like, I thought I thought it'd be fun if we did this in a German accent. What do you think? I'm like, um, this is
Now?
like a big TV show, and this is right now. You want me to do it right now? I've never done. I haven't practiced. Okay, how long do we? Oh, you like now? Okay, great. Thankfully, I
Uh,
only had one line and two lines in that scene, but and I had the weekend to kind of go home and like prep for the next for like the bigger scenes that I had. But it was terrifying. I was way more terrifying than doing the British accent for Rosamund. So like that's my goal. It's to just do something in an American accent. That which is, seems reasonable. Doesn't seem like I'm reaching high, but that's where I'm at right now.
what advice would you give younger Taylor who's just about to get involved in Wheel of Time?
Ooh, oh, not going that far back. Well, I guess 6 years. Um, I would say now that it's done, I'd say have more fun. Don't worry so much. Um, don't stress as much because no matter what you do, I think you want it to be good. You want your performance to be as great as possible, but like at the end of the day, it's going to be what it's going to be, and it's just not doesn't live or die on your performance, so you might as well have fun.
Mm.
Because I stressed a lot, and and probably have a few more gray hairs than I should because of
Is there any advice you would give to those listening who want to get into this business?
it. Oof. Yeah.
Especially, what advice would you have given them pre-COVID? What advice would you give them?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's very different. It is
Yeah,
true. It is actually very different now in terms of just getting jobs.
yeah.
Before, I think I would say put yourself in a position to be able to, go to New York or LA at an eventual point because it's very, everything's cast out of one of those two places. And if you're not there, then it's very hard to get jobs that,
Mm,
get you on the stage where you can build a career. Now that's very different.
mm,
And I would say invest time in training, invest time in, doing shows at your local level, at Encore, at the Theater Guild, all of those places in Morristown that have that. Hone your craft, get as good as you possibly can. Um, and then start going out for things in Atlanta, start going out for things, really nothing shoots in Los Angeles anymore. And
mm,
so even though a lot of things are still cast there, obviously the business is still there. Nothing shoots there. And so a lot of those smaller roles that you're going to be going out for at the beginning of your career, the three or four or five or six, even a couple of scenes, those roles are all going to be cast preferably out of Atlanta or out of somewhere close because they're cheaper. It's cheaper for the
mm,
production. So go to Atlanta if you're in Morristown, go to Atlanta and start there. Get a few jobs, get three or four lines here, there, three or four lines here. Build a solid little resume of a few different shows, and then get an agent there.
mm,
And then even the agents there now, I think are getting, and there are a few agencies in Nashville. Nashville's starting to pick up in terms of they've got two shows that are filming there right now, or or either filming or in between seasons or whatnot. Um, get an agent in the Southeast and they'll put you up for that stuff. And they will even get access to bigger roles at certain times. You'll be up against you'll be up against actors from LA and New York.
yeah.
And that makes it harder for you to get those roles. But, start locally, build your career there. And then once you have a few things on your resume, then start taking trips to LA and New York and start, dipping your toes into that water.
Mm,
And if you want to move, move. But you actually really, truly don't have to live in those cities anymore to make a career. You have to go to them occasionally,
mm.
meetings, have people know who you are, but you don't have to live there. and it's really expensive to live there.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of money not living there. And the money you make from acting will be able to go a lot further in Southeast. You'll be able to support yourself on a very modest sort of you can do you can't live off of two or three guest stars, co-stars a year in Los Angeles like it used to be. Can't do that. You can barely live off a series regular salary to be honest. But you can do that you can do it in Atlanta.
Yeah.
You can. And so it just makes the stakes lower. It just makes it, and like they're great acting communities there
Mm,
where I don't know if that was before. So I would say start locally and do all of those things and don't focus so much on going going to the big cities
hmm
because you don't need to.
hmm
Yeah.
So usually in interviews, I like to close out with a game I call the Nerdy If.
Okay.
One of questions of if. So if you could live anywhere in the real world, where would it be and why?
Ooh. Um, Changes day by day. I don't know. Some island in the Maldives.
Mm,
Probably
nice. If you could
easy.
live anywhere in a fictional world, where would it be?
Ooh. I don't know. That's a hard question. I would probably do can I do like a historical world instead?
Yeah.
Um, I'd like to live this is gonna be I'd love to live in I think living in Athens at the height of the Greek Empire would be fun
Yeah.
or different just to see what that is. I think that would be interesting. Yeah.
That's funny because my next question is if you could become any mythological god from any mythos, who would it
Yeah.
be?
Any mythological god. I'd say, I mean, hmm, I don't know. Apollo. Why not?
Okay. Nice. I'm a big Poseidon fan myself.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, you know.
uh, and they're big again because Epic the musical. It, you
Oh
know,
yeah, 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 yeah.
Greek gods are huge again,
We're
so
back in.
they're
The
back
Greek
in.
gods are back.
If you could become a fictional character for a day, who would it be?
A fictional character. Ooh. Oh, that depends on the day, man. I'd say today I'd be be like Hans from Frozen because it's so hot here. I'd like to cool off because it feels like that he lives in a
Yeah,
cold environment.
yeah,
So I'd say that. I'd
yeah.
say that.
Um, if you could change anything from an established IP, what would you change?
Anything?
Yeah. For instance, I asked Peyton this once, and she said Sirius's death in Harry Potter.
Oh yeah. Well, yes. Okay. Okay. Um. Wow. I won't use something from Wheel of Time. Um. Serious Death was a pretty good one.
Hmm.
I'd say. Oof. 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 Oof.
Because there's a lot you'd want to change.
So much. We write all of them. Um. No, I'd say. I don't know. That would probably. I feel like that's gonna take. I don't have one thing. See, my problem is I don't. I shouldn't say this one. I don't love. I don't read like. I'm obviously I've read Harry Potter, but like I don't read a lot of like those sorts of books and stuff. I'd say, oof, any IP, any IP. I'd say. Stop. Um, say, ooh, ooh. There's gotta be. I would say. This is gonna be a deep pull, and and this is, I would say some people would say like that's not an established IP, but it is. I'd say the grandmother's death from Dante's Peak that is so absolutely
Tragic.
it's so well, it's not tragic. It's so stupid
It's
that
finished.
that is I mean, there's a lot of problems with that film, but I would say that ruins that film for me, and
That
that
is
is an established IP, and I
that
would
is a
change
deep cut,
that.
man. Wow.
It's literally it's like this random film from the 90s. The grandmother, it's like an acid lake.
Yeah.
They're 2 feet away from shore. She decides to hop out because the boat's like leaking a little bit, but the boat was clearly going to make it to shore anyway. So she just basically kills herself for no reason. So that would
True.
be
It's so stupid.
yes, yes. That would be mine. That would be my change.
All right. If over the next 3 years, um, you could play any dream roles you have from any movie, TV, Broadway, what are the three characters you're playing?
I would do Brick from Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Uh,
Nice.
Nick from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and uh, Batman.
Hell yeah.
Bruce Wayne Batman.
Bruce Wayne. Um, if you could only listen to one movie soundtrack for the rest of your life, what is it?
Oh, soundtrack. Um, ooh, ooh. Uh, uh, probably the movie's only okay, but the soundtrack to the Tron remake.
Mm,
Yeah, the like electro pop funk crazy train browser. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That would be what I
solid.
would say.
If you were a superhero, what would your ability be?
Mm. I'd like to be able to not just read people's minds, but like influence, like make them like change, like
Yeah,
power, make them do whatever I want them to do, basically.
nice.
Which is more of like a super villain trait, I think, but maybe
I
not in the
guess if
super.
you abuse it, maybe
Yeah, yeah.
little things here and there.
Control people's minds. Whoa,
Yeah.
why did I think of that?
And finally, if you if you could be known for just one thing before you leave this mortal coil, what would you want it to be?
Um, I actually think going back to what we said about where we're from, I would just want people to think that I was authentically myself, whatever that means to them and to me. I think that's always been very important to me is, you know, just being me, whatever that means.
Yeah,
And that changes a lot, but I think I would want people to feel like they got to experience Taylor.
nice.
Yeah.
So, to someone who has not seen it or read it before, you have to pitch the Wheel of Time to someone. What is the Wheel of Time?
I had to do this on a talk
Really?
show. They were, this is avoiding your question for a second, but it was like, we had 5 minutes. It was like a 5 minute segment.
Wow.
And the producer came and she was like, listen, I've tried to write a summary of this show. I can't. So it's on you. So like they're just gonna ask you what's the wheel of time, and you gotta just say it, but it's gotta be in 20 seconds. So for someone who's never seen it to understand it. And this was like as we were walking and they were sitting me down, I was like, okay, all right, okay. And so I think the way I've always explained it is a world where only women can do magic. Men can do it, but they do it, they go crazy. And there's been a savior that has been born. And again, because he's been reincarnated. And that savior will either save the world or destroy it. And the search to find out who that person is and guide them to saving the world rather than destroying it is kind of what the show's about.
I think you
Uh,
pretty much hit it all.
yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, yeah. So that is it. That's all
Well,
the time.
thank you very much for doing this.
No, thank you for having me. You had some really great questions, man. That was a lovely interview, actually.
Thanks. Thank you. I really appreciated your performance and um really enjoyed it, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, I mean, I love being on the show and I love getting to play that character. And I hope, you know, I hope I think it did brought some joy to a few people around the world.
Absolutely.
I hope the show did too. It's such a fun show, like outside of me. It's such a fun show. It's such like a, you know, it's a, there's a lot to it, but it's also just a fun hour of television, I think. Always. Yeah.